Hello folks. Today I wanted to go over a problem that a user posted. They have a form where they have their students listed and they have the weeks that they're collecting data from, and they're just basically wanting the students to type in a number here. In fact, as a result of that, we can solve this problem. So they don't actually need to type that number in as a number. It just needs to be a number greater than zero, a number between 0 and 100. They're just wanting to track progress for a student. So that was the form. It was a real simple form. And here is the output, the data. There's your timestamp, and then you have the name of the student, what week, and what their progress is. Well, the issue is that the user wanted to see this data in a different format. They wanted to be able to look at the data by student, by week, and look at that progress that that student's making. So there's a couple of different formulas that you can use to do this. Let's first take a look at the first solution, which is a filter formula. And what this is doing, notice over here, I actually have a formula here to collect the name. So I'm using sort unique. I'm using an array literal actually, just so I can put my header, the name here. And then I'm doing a sort unique of data B2B. Data B2B is all the data, all the names that you're going to find in column B as your users submit this data. So that's how I'm getting the names here, and I'm getting them in alpha order using the sort unique. Here, I'm just typing week 1, and then I'm doing the drag across here so I can get all the way over here to week 10. So how do I get these numbers, these percentages? Because even though they're submitting the data as numerics, we wanted them to show up as percents. And so in this case, we have a formula. Let's take a look at this. We can zoom in a little bit. So this is a formula that says if error, because we're starting with that, because if we don't pull any data, we'd get an NA. We don't want that to show up. So we're wrapping the entire filter formula in an if error formula. So we're doing a filter, and we're filtering data D to D. So the data we want to pull is in column D of the data sheet. This is the column D, this is the progress. And then the next step we're doing, if you look at a filter function, here's the range, and here's condition 1. Condition 1 is data B2B is equal to A2. So one of the conditions is that the data in B, that would be name, is equal to the data that we see here, Bob. And then the second condition is that the data in C, which is your week, is going to be equal to the data that you see in B1. And then we're dividing that by 100 because we want a percent. Well, in this case, notice where I have the dollar sign. So I'm looking at data D2D. So I've locked those cell references. But then look at how I'm looking at this data, where data B2B, again, locking the cell reference, is equal to A2. Now, if I lock the A cell reference and drag this formula across, notice it will work. Let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to, these formulas are all in here. I'm going to just delete them just to show you how this works. Get rid of all those. So I have one formula, and I've written it such that I can copy it across and copy it down. And I can do that because I've said that the data in B, which is this name, is equal to A2, but I locked cell reference A. So if I drag this across, notice this says it's equal to A2. That didn't change. And then also notice that I've locked the cell reference for C equal to C1. Take a look here. I have had this be B1, but I locked the cell reference for the row 1, and then this one, when I drag it across, notice that changed to C. So it's important to use these dollar signs correctly when you want to copy a formula like this across. Now notice if I copy this formula down, it gives me the correct data because this becomes A3, this becomes A4, and so forth. So once I've copied that all down like this, I should be able to copy those down, and then I should be able to copy this all the way across like this. And sure enough, because this is actually looking at cell A7 and cell K1 for the row. So in that case, that's our filter formula, and it works. If I were to add more data, let's go ahead and just demonstrate that. Let's add, we don't have anything in here in week 8. Let's go ahead and have Bob submit for week 8. So we come in here, Bob, week 8, and Bob in week 8, let's just say he got a 55, and we submit, and then take a look at that data, and sure enough, Bob, week 8, has a 55%. So again, you could write the filter formula, but then you have to copy it down and across. A little bit complicated if you are using, if you're not familiar with using the dollar signs to lock the cell references. And in this case, as we went over, in the case of the name, you're locking the column, and in the case of the week, you're locking the row. Well, we can also do this with a single formula, and in this case, again, all I've done is copied the names here, so these are just all the names. I copied them from the other sheet, and here's all of our weeks. This one is done with one single formula, and I always like to see if I can't make things work with a single formula. So what this is doing is taking a look at as a couple of key features here. What we're doing is combining. We're combining some information here, and then we're taking a look at this array literal, and we're doing a VLOOKUP. We're building a virtual table here. Now let's see what those things look like if we break them apart. So what is this first part? A3 to A9 and B2 to L2. So if we were to take this little bit of data right here, and by the way, these, and if I were to just come here and paste this, I got to put an equal sign in front of that. Let's go ahead and do that. We have an error, and that's because we are looking at the wrong row. Let's take a look at this. So the error we're getting here, let's take a look at this error, and you can see that this isn't going to work for us because we need to wrap this with an array formula. Well, easy enough to do. I just get my cursor in here. I do a Command Shift Enter. There's my array formula, and I hit Enter. And now you can see what we've got is Bob week 1. So we're combining Bob week 1, Bob week 2, Bob week 3, and so forth, all the way up to Bob week 10. We're ending up here with an extra Bob. Let's see why that is the case. L2, yes, and we are only going to K. So let's fix that. Okay, so the reason I'm showing you this is how this part is working, where we actually have the Bob, we're generating these sets of names. Now the second part of this formula is a virtual array, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, copy it, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do equal and paste. This is a virtual array where we're combining data B2B and data C2C. We're combining that with data D2D and dividing by 100. Now, when we do that, we get Bob week 3, and if we take a look at the first thing we submitted, we have a Bob week 3. Somewhere in here, there's a Bob week 3 at 33%. So what we need to do is wrap this again with an array formula. So a Command Shift Enter and hit Enter. And now you can see it's taking all of the data that it finds here. We're starting with John week 1, 20%, and so forth. We're getting all of that data that we have right here, and we're getting all of this data. So what we're doing in this formula is doing a VLOOKUP of this name. So we're looking up Bob week 1. And then in this virtual array, we're using a VLOOKUP in it, and we're saying we want to look at this data that we created right here, 2 columns of data. John week 1 is a 0.2, John week 2 is a 0.25, and so forth. So when we find Bob week 1, that's what we're looking for in the first set here on this array formula. We're looking to pull back column 2, so Bob week 1 is a 0.03. And you can see Bob week 1 is a 0.03. So using these two basically array formulas, this whole thing is an array formula. With this one single formula, we are pulling back into a neat array, the same data that I'm getting here, but I'm doing it with a single formula by building this virtual array here and building a list of all the names that exist when I combine Bob week 1, Bob week 2, you can see that all the way across, John week 1, and so forth. So I'm building those names, then I'm using a VLOOKUP against a virtual array to go ahead and find that data. So it's a nice way to do this either way. Take data that you're collecting in a simple form like this and get it to output in a way like this with either a filter formula that you can design to copy across and down, or one single formula sort of with a different technique.